Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for attending our 5th technical webinar. And please allow to introduce myself to you. My name is Musbah Muqbil. I am a USG Middle East Regional Marketing Manager. Welcome to the 5th technical webinar titled Drywall for Exterior Envelopes and Wet Areas. The webinar today will present an interesting topics for the project designers, contractors, and even distributors, featuring two main products for exterior envelopes and wet areas, which are the Securock and Durock. These two products consider flagship brand names beside our Sheetrock, world-famous brand for gypsum board for interior and exterior finishes. During today's webinar, we will present the following points: the drywall for exterior application, exterior drywall product design, the facade finishing systems, surface systems, cement board, backer and glass mat panels, features and benefits, and finally the metal framing recommendation for drywall for wet area featuring the Securock and Durock. We as USG Middle East really are delighted for these continuous technical summits, which we are conducting on a monthly basis, where we have considered the last Tuesdays of each month, 3 p.m. KSA time, which is GMT +3, to meet and present the latest technologies in the building materials industry. Please save the date always to your calendar. The next webinar will be held on 27th of April, and we will present another attractive but lightened session, as it will be held during Ramadan month. The webinar will present the ultimate guide for cinema, ceiling and wall. This will be dedicated to show the latest ceiling and wall assemblies which can be used for cinemas projects. As we are always saying that your attendance and support are considered the main engine behind our successes for these on consecutive monthly basis webinars. This is to confirm the importance of the collaboration in the building materials industry between manufacturers, designers, distributors, and contractors. At USG Middle East, we work very close with our partners, with our project stakeholders, and other businesses to share always the best practices and find new ways to advance the performance of our products. Even we work more closer with the regulators and the construction influencers to meet the latest construction regulations and building codes for materials supply compliance. Our online page on the website for the webinar has been officially launched this month, where you can browse the future webinars and register for any topics you are interested to attend. Also, you can view any previous technical webinars. And please just allow me to see to the usgme.com. You can always review the webinars pages where you can register yourself for any coming one, and again you can view for the previous done. This is to confirm USG Middle East mission to deliver the innovation that helps you to work smarter, to do better, and to work more. For the attendees who are attending our webinar for the first time, in a slight glance and a few glance, USG Middle East operation has a multiple manufacturing facilities based in Dammam, Saudi Arabia, Doha, Qatar, and Turkey that allow us to supply any project in speed and high technical support. The company has more than 334 UL assemblies for more than 1,300 registered patents, which is a result for our dedication of excellence and innovation. We are considered as a single source manufacturer for drywall ceiling and acoustical ceiling and drywall partition assemblies. Kindly note for your record that this session will be recorded and we will share it with all participants after the webinar is ended. We would like gradually to thank our webinar speaker, Mr. John Andrews. John Andrews is our technical sales manager based in our office in UAE. John had received a BA degree in architect from Hull School of Architecture and currently is working with USG Middle East as the technical sales manager in the region. His professional interest for the past 25 years focuses on development of gypsum solutions for ceilings and partitions, with particular focus on the acoustic, fire, and mechanical performance. Is required mechanical in commercial projects. Please, for all participants, again attending for the first time, please note that we will receive an 1-hour credit for continuing professional development CPD certificate after this webinar. And if you have any question, please raise, just put it in the chat box and we will answer all of your questions at the end of this technical webinar. So now let me leave you with my colleague, John, for his technical webinar. John, please, if you can start sharing the screen and just unmute yourself.
Okay. You just found my PDF file. 1 moment, sorry.
Yes, we can hear you, John.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes, excellent.
Okay, let me just find my PDF file. It's vanished again, so there we go. I'll just go back up a slide. Okay, hello everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, as I believe we're having people from all over the world. Today I'm just going to run through, as Musbar mentioned earlier, the 2 main products that we have for exterior sheathing. That is the Securock and the Durock. The most important thing is later on, after presenting these 2 products and their benefits, I will look into the actual design criteria that are needed when you're considering using these products or considering deleting block work from your building in the future. I'll just share this now to full screen for you. Okay, hope everyone's happy and can see this. Okay, so start off with...
John, still we don't see your screen.
Is it on?
Just share.
1 moment, I'm going back into it again.
Yes, yes, John.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, if you can just go to the first slide, please.
Okay, sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We went a little bit too far there. Just trying to get my slide to work. 1 moment. Okay, I'll just put this to full screen now. So is that full screen for everybody?
Yes, yes, John. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at exterior substrates and the benefits initially of using an exterior substrate rather than block. So first things first, with these products that I just mentioned, the Securock and the Durock, we have the fire resistant tests for both class of spread of flame and for integrity and for insulation. The product is lightweight, and I will go into that in more depth later, how that can save you a huge amount of money on your sites. Both boards are resistant to water, so that's what makes them ideal for exterior sheathing applications. And after the sheathing application, obviously, you can add whichever finish you want, which I'll move on to as we get further. And at the end, I'll try and look, and hopefully you can judge by the cost effectiveness of using these products early in design and then taking this all the way through to actual contract. So the main issues and the main advantages is the process of building with exterior excuse me, sheathing, is that we have a greater reduction in time on site. This can be and has been on a number of projects almost 8 to 10 times quicker, so that your time on site is reduced. It reduces the load on the building. With that, you can often, because of the loads and the reduction in the block, you can reduce your slab thickness and also your foundation depth. So one advantage with both the coming out of the ground quicker, and then second one with your floor slab thickness is reduced. In some of the highest rise buildings that you can get, you may be able to actually put an extra floor into the height of the building that you've got. There's a huge amount of storage space reduction in using this product. Wet trades is usually a great issue of transporting water around the site. Obviously, with this product, we'll go into it. There is very, very few wet trade. In fact, the only thing is actually pre-made compounds, so that you don't have to have any water transport around the site. And we'll come into the acoustics and the fire improvements that you can achieve with this as well later on in the presentation. So the basic three systems that you will look at for your building is a direct applied render finish. When you look at these, you can get these full technical documents from ourselves at any time. You can fix metal panels or rain screen cladding, or we can actually have the system, which is the EIFS system, which is probably the most well known at the moment, where we actually put the insulation on the outside of the board and then apply the direct render. So the direct render applied system, a little bit of knowledge on this. This tends to be for very, very, very low rise areas, and also where the U value is not of tremendous importance. One of the things to look at when you're doing the direct render application is to ensure that you, especially in hot countries or countries that have huge variations in temperature, that you prepare or design for the thermal gain to prevent or restrict any movement that's within that wall. Also, the U value is a little bit lower because you can only actually insulate the void with this system. A lot of the times this, if you imagine, is turned on its onto a horizontal axis and is used for many balcony ceilings and such like. The metal cladding system, again, we can use both the Securock and the Durock on this system. And this is basically you seal your building with the sheathing board, either the Securock or the Durock, and then you add a channel system, and then you can add your rain screen cladding to this. So this is either the Securock or, as I said before, the Durock. So when you're looking at this picture, the green board in there is actually our Securock, and surprisingly, that is the actual colour of the board that you'll get on site. So you can have a nice bright green building for quite a bit of your construction. And then one of the most popular is basically the EIFS system. This is where we put the insulation on the outside of the building. This can actually accommodate much greater movement and also provides huge U value reductions. So if you put the rock wool on the external sort of, let's say, for example, a 100 kg rock wool at 75 mil, and then filled the void on the other side, which is basically to the room side. If you filled that with 75 mil to 100 mil glass wool, you can achieve U values of 0.2 to 0.2.5. So we'll go into the first bit, which is the Securock, and we'll move on to the Durock's advantages later. The difference with the Securock here is it's a glass mat sheathing, face it on both sides. What this is it's a basic gypsum board where we have actually replaced the paper that is normally put to encapsulate the gypsum core. We actually use a woven fiberglass mesh, which makes the product waterproof and water resistant. Within the core itself, we add a mold retardant so that we've actually managed to score 10 when accorded to ASTM D3273. Therefore, it's basically you're guaranteed that there's no mold can actually grow onto this board itself. Its fire resistance meets many of the UL criteria, and it also has Class A classification for fire spread. Most EIFS companies will use this and have approved this as a backing board. So they're looking towards EIFS and expanded glass or rock wool onto the external building, and your specialized render applicators, they will accept this, and it has been accepted by them throughout the industry. The massive advantage on this board, as I've mentioned it earlier, because it's got a gypsum core, it has the same cutting ability as gypsum, so therefore it can actually be cut with a craft knife and just snap, cut and score. So it's a very, very lightweight and easy to move around the site, and it's also very, very easy. So there's no electrical requirement for mechanical cutting. This system or board can actually be left exposed on the outside of the building for 12 months. This would mean that you can actually make your building completely watertight whilst the external facade slowly goes up the building. So therefore you can actually be completing fit out on the interior before the external facade is finished. This is something that you cannot do with the block, obviously, because the block would have to be up before you can start working on the internals. And basically, the board carries our normal warranty for 5 years. Is this a new product? Well, actually, no, it is not. The glass mat actually has been on the market in America and moved out through Europe and now into the MENA region and Asia region. The first manufacturer of this was in 1985 in America, and it was a company called Ben's Glass Cold. So you can see that this product has now got a 35 to 40 year life, so that we could actually in theory offer a 40-year warranty. So it's not something that is experimental, and it's something that you can definitely be happy with and assured that will suit and be fit for purpose for your product, your project, sorry. We actually started manufacturing this as USG in America in 2008. So we now have over 13 years of experience of manufacturing this product. Just as an example for people that are outside America, this was figures that were taken in 2013. As you can see, the market share originally we thought would be for this board, we thought would be for interiors. But when we look at the green area on this pie chart, there's 340. That is 340 million square feet are sold in America for this application for sheathing on the external of buildings. So it's been completely accepted in America and has practically replaced block all over the States. When looking at this slide, you can also see that it can also be used for tower backers, liner panels, roof cover board, and also missing off this slide is for shaft wall applications, which I'll come to later. A quick look at the Securock itself. As I mentioned before, it's basically a woven glass mat that you can see on there, which is an inorganic glass mat. Typically, when we look at gypsum and the board, The paper and some of the gypsum will have a cellulose content. It's the cellulose content that allows for mold growth. Within the Securock itself, there is no cellulose at all, and thus you do not get any form of mold growth in this. We also manufacture this to the Type X solution for fire assemblies as well. And in an exterior application, we've actually achieved with our products, both internal and external, through Facade system, we've achieved a 2-hour through ASTM. So that's a 2-hour installation and integrity fire rating. So just to recap, it's basically there's no cellulose on the back or the front. It's fully moisture and mold resistant, has a totally non-combustible core, and carries a number of UL systems and approvals. At the top in the picture there, you can actually see some of the manufacture, and in the green rolls there, this is the woven fiberglass that we replace the paper with, and the white roll is the backer board, or the backer paper and woven fiberglass paper. So just looking quickly at some of the ULs, UL 305, we can put this onto a timber. The UL 415 can be used in a shaft wall situation, which we'll come to later. The low bearing steel studs and horizontal studs, we hold the UL 423, and for non-load bearing, we hold UL 419. So this shows you that we can offer you both the fire resistance that you would require on any system. A quick look at the side, you can see here, this is the Durock actually going up as a sheathing board before we put any form of cladding over the top. And you can imagine how quickly that actually goes into place. So key UL assemblies are noted here. If you go onto our website, we actually have a full access to the UL, and we can issue any UL documentation that you actually require for the UL assemblies that we have for these systems. The Durock is basically following the cement fibre principle, but rather than normally we get blown fiberglass blown into the cement, what we actually do, we use a layered mesh system that goes all the way through, with layers of the cement going over the top of that. This basically increases the strength and the flexibility of the board. As I mentioned, as noted at the side there, it's strengthened with a polymer coated glass fibre. While compared to cement board that's on the market, the Durock is actually easier to cut and to fasten. It has because of the fiberglass face that we have on the front of it, it actually takes 40% better to adhese tiles. So the tiles actually adhese better to this than they would do a normal cement board. It's non-combustible in the same way that the Securock was. And it also carries its UL fire certificates, an example being U423. We will go a little bit further later on about wind loads, but again, this product is also water durable and mold resistant. Has very, very low thermal expansion. We will design, don't worry about your wind loads for now, but because we will actually take into the wind loads and design this for you when we're looking at your facade systems. And we can offer again a 30-year warranty for this product. One of the huge advantages of the Durock compared to other cement boards that are on the market is it's quite flexible. So not only does it give itself racking strength when it's in the horizontal or vertical position, we can also curve this board to some quite tight radiuses. So personally, myself, I've actually had this board radius down to 3.5 meters. Here we see another example that is typical that's been used outside in the marketplace. And that is the underside of balconies. This has taken over a lot of areas nowadays, and is a very, very quick way of giving you a very smooth and quick finish to the balconies. One of the things that I would mention in this is when we're looking at balconies, again, please consider the wind loads. This is not the same as designing a ceiling or a standard ceiling on the inside. You have to consider the high wind loads that are in there. So the gauge of metal must be increased when you're designing for external balconies. The second thing that you would need to look at, and again, we are here to help you with this, with the technical aspects of this, is although it may well be designed to the wind loads in some areas, as I mentioned earlier, the thermal conditions have a greater influence on the design and the actual wind loads. A lighter gauge metal may well work as a suspension system for this Durock, but the thermal gain from daytime to nighttime can cause more movement. So you do not be surprised if we are specifying a 0.7 or a 0.9 gauge suspension in this system, for this system. So again, we've got the Type X for the Durock. The typical screwing centers are very, very similar to any sort of gypsum partition that goes up. The reinforcing tape is a fiberglass tape. It's wider than that you'd use on the internals, and this actually melds in or actually blends in with the fiberglass that is already on the surface face of the board. As mentioned earlier, you're usually using 0.9 for this board to give it both the strength, help with the racking strength and with the thermal expansions. And we actually have for the jointing, we use our jointing compound, which is base coat. The base coat that we have is actually designed or manufactured and chemically put together to give us an expansion of plus or minus 3 millimeters. So that helps tremendously in these areas, and this is the product that we would always recommend that goes over and joints the Durock and the Securock on external systems. So a quick little bit, I will knock the Durock very slightly, but cement boards are much worse than this. Cement boards are not fully dimensionally stable. So although they're waterproof, they will absorb and soak in water and expand or contract as they dry out. This can cause movement and can cause cracking, which sometimes we see. The big advantage, and why a lot of people are now moving to the Securock for the external, is that it is 100% dimensionally stable. And thus, we can actually butt joint these together and be reasonably 100% happy that we will not find any cracking in the final finish. Cement boards, as I mentioned, Durock is easier to cook than most cement boards, but with Securock you can cut it with a craft knife. Durock is actually the lightest board in the industry as a cement board, but when we're actually looking at the Securock, it's much lighter again, so it's much easier to carry around. Both boards, cost-wise, are economical in the market. Screw fixings for the Durock, we need a specialist screw that goes through and self-taps, whereas we've got standard screws that can fix the Securock. And as I mentioned before, water resistance, the Durock will hold the water off, but it will actually absorb a small amount. The Securock absorbs only 5% of water and has an ASTM D273 score of 10 out of 10, which basically means that it's dimensionally stable. So looking at the applications that you'll have for this product, and basically what we're showing here is anything that you want on the outside or your building to look like, you can have. So you can have an EIFS system, you can have a brickwork, you can have a rain screen finish, you can have stone finish or composite panel. But the advantage is that the sheathing board that is in front of your final finish has made your building watertight, so that you have already started work on the internal side of the building. Both Securock and Durock go up in two methods, either infill or they can go up as oversail. It's very, very simple. It's just a basic stud and track that flick together, and then we screw the boards to the outside. So the sheathing board and then the gypsum board would screw to the inside. So it's a very, very simple and very, very quick system to install. As I mentioned earlier, up to 10 times quicker than block work. Here we see the oversail system, where you can actually fly past the end of the concrete slab or steel structure and have it as a full system that's running past. So if you look at the diagram in the bottom corner, which says deflection zone, this basically shows that we can have a movement in the stud and that you can take the whole of your external cladding fly past. This obviously can gain you a little bit of space and also reduces you the loads and reduces and gives you a little bit more footprint as you go along. One of the huge advantages, if we look at the photograph in the corner, this is the external wall. If you can imagine trying to run your electrical services through the block work, you spend hours and hours chasing out the block and thus weakening the block. The electrical and M&E services can actually run within the void of this stud work. The huge picture on the other side is basically showing us 3,000 meters of SFS. So that's 3,000 meters of facade that was delivered on 2 trucks. The equivalent block would have taken up to 12 to 15 times more space on site. So if you have a restricted space on site or restrictions in transport into your site, this can reduce also the number of articulated lorries or whichever that you're bringing into maybe a city centre or onto a very congested site. This will reduce that by up to 10 times. Moving this around the site is also very, very easy on the crane and can also go up in the hoist. And so thus you would be reducing your craneage time by 10 times as well, freeing up craneage on higher rise buildings to move other products around the site. Another big advantage is, if you can imagine, this is just a very, very lightweight scaffold. The weight required for a very much heavier scaffold for block work, because you cannot load the platforms out with the block without the much heavier gauge scaffold. And as I mentioned previously, there's no wet trades, and it's actually proven to be 8 to 10 times quicker than block work construction. So once again, just a quick reminder, we've got the infill system and oversail. For those that are interested in the detailing, this is basically how we look at the window support methods. So we use the metal stud as a head jamb and bay and windowsill, and these can have plates so that you can have a setback window or a projected out window. What is very important is looking at the height between slab and slab. This again, we will take the wind loads for you. As an example, in the UAE, we have to design for wind loads of up to 160 kilometers per hour. So you will find that the detailing around penetrations and windows or openings and doors is very, very specific. Plus, we actually have to consider the stud sizes itself. So typically, you would find that studs will range between 100 mil at a gauge, minimum gauge of 1.2, all the way up to a 200 mil deep stud with a gauge of 2 and sometimes even 2.5 millimeters to allow for the wind loads and to ensure that there is no movement in the wind from the wind pressures. With the building, which is, I won't go into too much depth, but we can have both positive and negative pressure on the facades. And a lot of people who are listening on this will understand this. So when we're getting to much larger openings, again, we have the detail so that we can do huge glazed areas within your facade. It's just a case of boxing out our studs, just to make basically a more compound lintel as such going across the head jambs or sill. The external junction, this is a very important detail which I'd like to share with you. In the first diagram with the big red cross, this is something that you should not do. The reasons are explained on the slide next to you. One is that you have basically a direct transfer of fire running into this void. So fire can go from one, let's say, apartment to another apartment very easy, and this actually acts as a form of chimney when detailed like this. Plus, you can also be subject to very, very high acoustics flanking noise. So you can be happily designing a very, very high acoustically performing partition and fire resistant partition for the internals, and you have compromised it by what's basically poor detailing as shown in diagram 2. However, the huge advantage of this system and working with the gypsum at the same time is if you follow diagram 3, not only are we stopping any flanking noise, so from hotel to hotel room or apartment to apartment, you're guaranteed that you will not get the acoustic transfer. But detailing in this way by running the boards or the partition through to the back of the sheathing board also provides you a cavity barrier. So it actually saves money in creation of cavity barriers between rooms or apartment to apartment. So you can actually compartment your building. I was trying to say a word, but it was not coming out. You can actually do this and make sure that you're meeting the fire requirements and help stop any fire spread between room to room or apartment to apartment. So the gypsum coming up to the back of a sheathing board in this manner acts as the perfect cavity barrier. A couple of examples. This is a small hotel that we did in Oman, where everything that you see on here was actually all done with the SFS with the Durock on the outside. So this is a full installation, and this was about 14,000 square meters of SFS and cement board that we put on there, and we did all the interface partitions as per the previous detail with over 20,000 square meters of partitions on the internals. So just to sum up, it's basically your key benefits for sheathing boards being in this form of construction, to which we offer 2, which is the Durock and the Securock. You get faster time to close in the building, allowing interior finishes to start. Faster installation time compared to masonry or fibre cement. basically due to the ease of cutting. There's a lot less structural steel required due to the load reductions. You get much better thermal performance through the walls, and the masonry look can still be achieved afterwards with your form of cladding. And here's just a couple of the buildings that we've done with our Securock. This, just showing this here, there's a lot of interesting modular housing that's going out there, and so this board can be used in a modular fashion so that your external walls or the modular box for your villas or house or warehouse unit can actually be built off-site using this board. And because it's 10 times lighter, it's much easier to transport than you would do with traditional construction. And this is where we look at the balcony situation. So we've got both the Durock and the Securock on split pictures here, and in the green area with the Securock, this is the base coat finish that goes over, which we then apply an exterior quality flexible paint to, and then thus your balcony is finished. I mentioned earlier, we've also developed this for shaft wall, so that you can actually put your shafts, because typically the shafts can go up early in a building but are not sealed. So we can actually put the shaft board in, which is the same with the Securock, and it will not be again subject to any moisture damage or mold damage. So you're basically, again, you can start putting up shafts and increasing the speed of which you put your building up. And again, most importantly, again, this is 10 times lighter than a blockwork construction. At any time, we're all available to go into more depth, to go into these systems and to the designs. But as an example, in Kingdom Tower, which is the tallest building in the world under construction now, it is this shaft wall construction, our shaft wall construction, that they are actually using there to go all the way up the 1 kilometre that they're planning, or whichever, yeah, I believe it's 1 kilometre. But the Securock can also, the Securock can also be used, and the cement Durock can be used as per this. Is basically, missed the slide there. Basically the benefits, it's does not, the Durock does not swell. Again, it doesn't warp, delaminate or disintegrate. It's easy to cut and to fasten, and it was backed by a 30-year warranty. Again, we have the Class O for no mold growth, the same as the Securock, and it's also works the Class A fire spread, and plus prevents tile pops and grout cracks up to 40% greater than standard fibre cement boards. We've been through this before, so I'll just move on quickly for you. The Securock, just as a last one, just to remind you, again, scores 10, and the mold resistance to ASTM D3273, so there's no worries about any mold growth on this. This board can also carry up to 75 kg per meter squared in a cladding, but to go to these sorts of weights, you would need to speak with the technical department just to make sure that we detail this correctly for you, and carries numerous UL classifications. When we're looking at the heights, we will go through all the heights with you and design and help you go and design, make sure that you have the right heights within your building. And that's all. Thank you very much. A little bit ahead of time, so I'll leave you some questions.
Well, thank you very much, John Andrews, our technical sales manager in the UAE office, for this constructive contribution, presenting the webinar titled Steel Envelopes for Drywall and Wood Areas. This was the 5th technical webinar for USG Middle East. We are scheduling the coming one, which would be the 6th on the 27th of April. Again, it would be hosted by John Andrews, our technical sales manager, where he will...
really?
That's
new.
Right for feeling. Yes, we will host you again, but it will be a mild one since it will be in Ramadan month, John. So it might be a short presentation. Again, each participant will receive an 1 hour credit for continuing professional development CPD certificate after this webinar. Going for the John now answering the question and answer which has been raised during your presentation. We'll start with this one. Could you please repeat and explain more on the glass mat sheathing Securock?
And in respect to what it is, or
the comparison between Securock and Durock. If you can just go back to that slide, please, John, and just explain where you can use the Securock versus the Durock.
well, effectively, I'll try and go back. There's something not going back on that slide.
Just if you can scroll.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's not so much the Durock, it's more against cement board, I believe.
Yes, that's one, John. Yes.
Okay. Let me just move this out of the way. So basically, the main things are with the Securock and the Durock. The Durock is, I would say, probably a much better tile backer board and will take greater weight. The stability that I mention here is all cement boards, not just Securock. Securock is better than most of the fiber cement that's out there. Actually will absorb water, so it will actually expand and contract. So if you're using it in a sheathing application or in a bathroom or something, a very, very wet area, the boards will actually expand. So this effectively means that when you're installing it, you should leave a 2, 3, or sometimes even a 4 mil gap between each board, and then fill with a water resistant either sealant or compound. So the advantage that the Securock has over that, is that it's actually dimensionally stable, so it will not absorb water. When it is fully immersed in water, it remains the same size. So you do not need this joint in between the boards. So that's the first one. The Securock is difficult. Sorry, the Durock, it can be cut with a knife, but it's very, very difficult. So the majority of the people in the market will actually use a mechanical cut on there. The Securock, with it being a gypsum, you can actually just quite easily cut it with a craft knife, snap it, and then score, and it cuts the same way as a standard gypsum board would cut. The good thing on the Durock is basically one of the lightest cement boards on the market. We've got down here that they're basically 14 kg. Quite often you will find that that's for the 15.9. You will find that could be up to 18 or 19 kg. When you look at the Securock compared to a normal cement board, you're actually talking of almost 50% lighter. So labour moving the boards around the site is much more easier, and it actually, with a two-man lift, you're actually not breaking health and safety laws that you would have in some countries. And the availability of the Durock, basically at the moment, we obviously we have our warehousing facilities in both Saudi and the UAE, so the lead time on the Durock has a 3 to 4 weeks, whereas the Securock is actually manufactured in our plant along with the gypsum boards in Salalah in Oman. So the availability of this can be 8 to 10 days if needs be. So it has no problem. And I think that just about covers that, hopefully.
John, yes, you have answered 50% of the second question. If you can please just elaborate more on the difference between the Durock and the traditional cement board.
The traditional cement board, what we did when we developed the Durock in America, it's like we layer the concrete pour over a fiberglass mesh, which gives it its inherent strength and flexibility. This meant that we could actually aerate the concrete a little bit more with our foaming technique within the cement that's going in there, and make it a lighter board, more flexible, but with more strength because of the reinforcement of the fiberglass. Standard cement boards is a very, very dense board, thus it's much heavier, and for that reason only, that is the main difference between the two. You'll also find that cement boards or fiber cement boards that are available in the market are not very flexible. Any more questions?
Yes, John. For the Securock weight, one of the participants had raised a question for the weight difference between the Omani and the US, because he said that what would be the right weight which will be supplied from USG? He said that there is a weight difference. So why there is a weight difference at which one we supply from USG Middle East?
No, the weights that I've got here are the Securock that is part of the ASTM, so there should be very similar weights. There's
between the US board and the Omani board.
Yeah, but there's constant movement in both countries where they try and we put a foaming agent in the board to try and get more air in, so that can give the weight variations depending on the foaming agent and the speed of line. Basically, if everyone knows what an aero chocolate bar is, that's basically what a gypsum is under a microscope. It's full of little tiny air bubbles where we try our hardest to make the board lighter and yet maintain the strength and its acoustic property.
John, as a technical manager, would you recommend to use the Securock in internal wall in a semi-open space, such as resort or villas?
Yes, no problem at all. One of the big things that I missed out on the Securock as well is, especially in the Middle East and in Asia, we tend to have a lot of air conditioning units that are run through bulkheads, and the vents are in the bulkhead. And everyone that's been living here for a number of years will have seen the mold that grows around those ventilation grills that you go up and clean every day. This is because typically these are made out of gypsum board, just a standard gypsum board. And you have a massive temperature difference between the cold air coming out of the vent to the warm air in the room. So we get what's called interstitial condensation or dew, and that makes the board wet, which gives us this horrible mold growth. The huge advantage, and I've done it in 2 or 3 hotels now, and there's no problem, is that you use the Securock alone in that bulkhead area and you get no mold. So doing the Securock on inside that villa on an exposed wall, it's no problem at all.
John, question for the fire rating for the Securock.
Yeah.
Would you recommend to use a one layer of Securock for fire rating 2 hours instead of double layers of conventional gypsum board?
No. We did the tests to ASTM. If you took a standard partition system, which is basically gypsum on either side, we actually did this for an external wall. So we had 2 layers of Type X standard gypsum on the inside, and then we tested with a 15.9 Type X Securock on the external face, and that gave us 1 hour. When we did 2 layers of 15.9 Type X Securock on the outer face, we got 2 hours. And that also passed the fire hose test as well.
Okay. John, what is the material density used at the Durock? What would be the bulk density?
I'd have to come back to you. All I've got is the weights on there, so I'd have to look at that
Okay.
density. Yeah, that's in the technical data sheets.
So
I've got too much in my head to remember that one.
I'll extract it now from the data sheet while you are answering the coming question. Could be the Securock flexible materials to be bent?
Yes, I've just finished working some partitions in SeaWorld in Abu Dhabi that we're constructing, and I'm now down to approximately a 5 to 4.5 meter radius. Actually, it's a little bit less than that. It's probably 3.5 meters that I've done, and I've also got it so that there's a way that we can actually clad columns with this as well. So I can happily share that photograph with Musbar, and he can put that up on a later date so you can see some of these curves that we've achieved with the Securock.
John, for the water resistant for the Securock, the performance, will be there any water patch mark on Securock when be used in a wet area, like a toilet and bathroom? Say gypsum, the core is gypsum.
You can use Securock throughout the bathroom in all areas. The problem is you don't want the board to be wet permanently. It has to have a chance to dry at some point. So normally I would recommend that in a bathroom, the shower area or the extremely wet area, we would revert back to the Durock. 1, because it takes the tile, and 2, that it can actually stay wet for a longer period of time should moisture manage to get through the tile and the protective coating that you've put on before your tile.
John, the Durock density, it's almost around 950 to 1,000
Yeah.
per cubic meter, just answering the question as per the technical data sheet. I have another question, John, for the refurbishment projects and replacement. Which one you recommend to have for wet areas for replacement of restoration projects would be better for the wet area? Securock or Durock, and why?
Either. There's just space-like detailing in both of them. There's a difference in detailing. Extreme wet areas, as I've mentioned before, I would still be tempted to go back to the Durock, but either board can be used. It's just it's a different way of detailing. It's a different way of protecting the area. So we have to put a secondary cover over the Securock. But in most wet areas that we discuss, it's usually fully tiled. And if an area is fully tiled, then there's no problem with either.
Another question, close to the topic, one of the contractor are replacing a damaged board in the interior wall cladding. There is some damaged, and also they have problem found in the vapor moisture barrier. What would be the recommended solution in order not to have the problem in the future of vapor moisture barrier?
No, what, something puncturing the moisture barrier?
Yes.
I'd have to, with that one, I'd have to look at the construction that they've actually put together, because there's must be 20 or 30 different solutions that I'd need to look at. If I started to answer now, I could be answering completely the wrong thing to the wrong type of construction or detail.
So
I'll be happy. Yeah, I'd happily, if someone can send me the section or what the problem is, I'll happily look at that for them.
I will add, John, your email address to the chat box for everyone so they can contact you directly for any technical question similar to this.
Yeah, no problem.
For the external cement board system, what would be the height limitation, the number of stories?
At the moment, I believe the highest that anyone's gone up is about 22 stories.
And what would be the common problem if used in the high-rise building, the cement board?
The biggest problem that I've come across is non-attention to detailing. So when we use both either the Securock or the Durock externally, we have to look at the steels, the gauge of metal that's used, and we have to consider the movement that's going to be happening on this building. So the movement joints are probably the one thing that has been missed by a lot of people. You see, we'll be asked for a section, and then we'll actually see the elevation of a building at a later stage, and usually that's a little bit late for me to start introducing the movement joints that they should have, and therefore you get a little bit of cracking. They're not structural cracks as such, they're more decorative, superficial cracks in the final coat or finish that you put on there. But we have specialist slip joints that we've designed. So typically on an external balcony or facade, you need to be looking at a movement joint every 5 meters linearly and 8 meters vertically. So the movement joints are quite important.
John, do we have the DCD certificate approval in UAE?
Yeah, we've got DCD certificate. We've got Abu Dhabi Civil Defence for this system. For the external wall, that is under process now in Dubai for DCD. So we've taken the Abu Dhabi Civil Defence certification that we have for this system that was tested at Thomas Bell Wright, and that is now under process in DCD. But in a lot of instances, unless it's the full wall that you're using, DCD is only actually asking for a Class A fire spread for these areas. So it depends on the construction, but we've used this all over Dubai because they're only actually looking in that particular instance for Class A fire spread, not for the full ASTM integrity and insulated properties.
John, one interesting question about the approval of installer. Mentioning that we have nice products for external and internal application, but what about approving an installer or on-site inspection? Which kind of services does USG Middle East provide?
We will provide a list of our recommended installers. If there is an installer out there that wishes to get onto that list, we have to observe their work and we will move forward with them. On all major projects, and especially when we're using this product, we typically do a site visit every week or every 2 weeks and inspect a full area and instruct or pass as the case may be. So yes, we will be on site at a regular basis to support both the architect, main contractor, and the installer.
For the finishing, John, which kind of tape should be used for the Securock and Durock, and which kind of finish coat do you recommend? The question has two answers, one for interior application and one for the EIFS system.
Typically, I would say in both, you need the fiberglass mesh tape. The 50mm wide, the Durock tape is the one that you need, the Durock fiberglass tape. And you would always use the base coat because it's flexible, and that's in both situations.
So it can be used for both Securock and Durock?
Yes. It's actually, when I'm using the Securock externally, I insist on using the base coat rather than just a normal jointing compound.
Till now, so far, John, this was the last question. Please just drop your question to the chat box so we can answer immediately. John, a new question for the shaft wall system. The fire rating for shaft wall, how much our systems are rating?
You can basically get to a 4-hour for a shaft wall. But the most common construction is a 2-hour fire shaft.
This would be using how many layers of Type X?
With the 2 hours, it's a 2-layer Type X, and obviously with the shaft board. So that's a 15.9 Type X. Okay. We're also working on that as at this present moment as for a shaft wall for vertical ceilings, so that we have a system that, especially for plenums, that is 2 hours fire resistant from both sides. So if you have a plenum fire, the void is protected, or if there's a fire below, it's also protected. So that's something that we're working on at this present, and we have programmed for testing very shortly.
For mold and mildew grow, John, which one you recommend to use, the Durock or the Securock, and why?
Both do not have mold or mold growth.
Both. So if the waterproofing warranty is provided by third party, is the base coat skimming still required?
I would always say yes, because it gives you a better finish. It gives you a more even finish. If you're just doing the joints, then the workmanship issue is that it has to be very, very well sanded down, and then whoever's putting the final finish over the top has to compensate for those joints. So the full skim with the base coat alleviates that problem immediately and gives you a very monolithic surface for them to work on.
So far, John, we have answered the entire questions that had been raised. So we'll give a couple of minutes just to space if anyone has a question. Or I had shared to everyone John Andrews' email address. You can just drop immediately and your technical question. So far, we are good, John.
Okay.
Thank you for this constructive and presentation. Thank you all for attending this fifth technical webinar. Honestly, we are being encouraged to maintain this consecutive webinars due to your participation, presence, question raised during the webinar means that you are really interested to receive always additional information from USG Board Middle East. So till the coming one of the 27th of April, as we said, it will be again hosted by John. It will be a mild presentation for the cinema for wall and ceiling application. Till then, stay safe and see you there. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.